The real game begins. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
There was a definite agenda to have a bigger Batman. And my job was to put in everything new that I could.
I guess the feel, the mood was a bunch of grown-ups. It's Halloween, and we get to do whatever we want because it's a magical world. It's one of those strange, once-in-a-lifetime experiences.
It was such a different feel, you know, from the first two movies. I think that when people saw, you know, they were doing the Riddler and stuff, and it just had a different look to it. And I think people were really excited when it was coming out.
Bob thought that because the second one was perhaps in moments a little too dark, then the third one should be a little more upbeat, not like the television show by any means, but a little bit more lighter, brighter than the second one.
The movie was bigger and more welcoming than we remember, because now we see it in the context of history. But it was a kind of spectacle, and a kind of spectacle that touched for a second what people seem to be hungry for. It was wild summer entertainment.
Joel always wants to push the envelope. He wants it fantastic, I mean, to use his own words, exciting and a little extreme. Now, you look at it today, you wouldn't think twice about it. At the time, it was a little on the edge. It was sort of like Saturday Night Fever on acid.
I thought that Batman Forever clearly captured that 1940s, early 50s era of Batman comics. Bill Finger used to write these great stories about Batman fighting villains, jumping from the keys of a giant typewriter that was in display in some World's Fair or wherever, and giant pencil sharpeners. And Batman and Robin were fighting together for the first time. The Riddler made his first appearance in the comics around that time. So everything began to change, and I think that Batman Forever did capture that era of the comic book successfully.
I think that they were looking to re-energize the franchise, to give it a new look, turn it more back to the comic strip, and probably, in a word, more pop. And Joel, of course, was a perfect choice for that. I'm sure this is one of the reasons they wanted Joel, because he wanted to sort of make it a comic book come alive.
I'd never made a comic book before, and it's just great for the imagination because you're not dealing with real life. And once you get into a comic book, you have a much different world, and you get to create a Gotham City. You get to create what all these characters are going to look like. And the studio did want another Batman, and they wanted it to be sort of reinvented. What I said was I'd have to talk to Tim Burton because he's a friend of mine, and I wouldn't do that if Tim wasn't comfortable with it. So I went and had lunch with Tim, and Tim said, no, I'm through. I'm out of there.
Tim was sort of transitioning away from directing and staying on as producer, but handing the reins off to Joel. But we sat down in the room with the both of them, asking, what's your take on Batman? And Jen started talking about how Batman is always about duality, and Tim's eyes just lit up. He said, yes, they get it, they get it.
The transition was absolutely smooth from Tim to Joel. We had a couple of meetings with both of them, and then Joel was taking the reins, and it just seemed like the smoothest possible transition on a franchise of this size.
The Batchers wrote the first draft, and in it, Edward Nygma, who becomes the Riddler, was a scientist. He had a pet rat named Sydney, I remember. It had charming things to it. It was not quite where I thought we were going to ultimately go, but it was a wonderful start, and they were very creative, and they really cracked the ice.
We always figure somebody's going to find a way to make it work. Somebody's going to find a way to put it on screen. And our job is to have the wild enough imagination for it to be worth putting on screen.
I think Joel wanted to make it a little more poppy than Lee and Janet. They were a little more in the tradition, and Joel wanted to stretch it out a little bit, which is, I think, why he ultimately chose Akiva to come in.
What I was trying to do was sort of make it a little bit more of a psychologically real story, try to infuse the characters with a little more pathos and angst, and those things that were slowly but surely getting allowed into comic book movies.
You know, I thought the first movie with Nicholson and Keaton and those guys was amazing. The second one, I didn't like the second one as much. I thought it got really dark. I just didn't enjoy it as much. And Joel coming in, I thought that, you know, this is going to be perfect, because I think he'll make it a little bit more colorful and just lighten it up a little bit. These films are all about the visuals, and Joel's a very visual guy.
Tim was more a psychological thriller, and Joel is more a viewing thriller, of excitement to look at.
Joel's style is very presentational and operatic, very sort of beautifully lyrical and larger than life. And that was clearly the style he was taking to Batman.
Go ahead. You can say it. You're a genius.
Practically speaking, the first thing was to find space. To make a movie on this scale, you need an enormous amount of space. I mean, this was Warner Brothers Studio that's got, what, 40 stages. There wasn't a stage big enough to build our sets. So that was the very first practical problem of where are we going to build these sets that we can get to in film, based in Los Angeles. The second thing was the cost. It was critical.
When I first started the film, I thought I was going to make it with Michael Keaton. When Michael Keaton fell out, I had just seen Val Kilmer in Tombstone, and I thought he was fantastic in it, and I thought he would be a great Batman.
Michael didn't feel that he wanted to continue. Same thing again, sort of like Tim, that he'd done 2 big Batman movies, and he wanted some change in his life. He dabbled with maybe coming into the picture, maybe not. And so we just sort of gravitated to Val.
It turned out while they were discussing me as the next candidate for the role, I was researching a film about an African adventure. So on the day that Warner Brothers called my agent and said, yeah, he's who we want, I was in a cave full of bats in South Africa.
Bruce Wayne has always been glamorous and attractive and charming on one level, and then dark and tortured, you know, underneath. And I knew Val could play all those sides.
It's not that much fun to be Bruce Wayne. He's kind of in turmoil, you know. I mean, as a character, I was thinking of the character and doing stuff. It was kind of challenging playing the role, to be involved and appropriately involved in the depth of the truth of the character, the myth, and not be so far in it that you're out of the style.
Broken wings mend in time. One day Robin will fly again. I promise.
I think bringing Robin into the Bat, I don't think at the time when Joel did this, we envisaged that it would become Batman and Robin ultimately, even though from a creative point of view, we knew that, but that wasn't the determination. Joel felt it needed a youthful energy.
Well, I'd never known Batman without Robin. I mean, I grew up on Batman, and there always was Batman and Robin, so it just seemed natural. And we went way back to the early comic books. The circus story and his parents dying that way, that's all from a comic book.
I came to be a part of the movie when I got a call from Joel Schumacher that he was interested in me playing the part of Robin.
I asked Chris to do it right away. I had seen Chris, you know, in all his films, and I thought he'd be a perfect Robin. And Chris was off in Ireland doing Circle of Friends.
I had heard on, you know, TV how they're having these casting calls all over the country and meeting people. I'm like, well, I'm confused because I got a call from my agent saying Joel wants to meet me, he wants me to play the part.
Mally Finn, our casting director, did a nationwide search, and we also looked in London. The day I was in London, they were all teenagers. I met Ewan McGregor, Jude Law, Alan Cumming, Toby Stevens, and a whole bunch more that have all become stars now.
It was pretty wild to be offered the part because, you know, I grew up watching, you know, the TV show religiously as a kid, and you know, when I was like a Batman fan, you know, I was like, well, I'm gonna be Robin, okay, you know, and it was surreal. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, there's so much exposure that you risk people always remembering you, you know, from that role. But at the same time, that international exposure, it can be so beneficial to your career and getting films made and that sort of thing. So you kind of have to, you know, think for a second before you kind of just jump into it.
This is your brain on the box. This is my brain on the box. Does anybody else feel like a fried egg?
Jim Carrey had his first picture was out, which the Ventura picture, and there was just a buzz about this guy.
I had known Jim ever since he started out as a stand-up comic. I had met him very, very early in both our careers, and he was just starting to emerge as a superstar.
One of the fears that I had going into the project was that, okay, here now is my first huge budget, you know, kind of deal with a lot of people, with a lot of egos, with a lot of everything. And everybody's the best at what they do, you know, and so are they going to be open to my ideas, you know? And of course, from the first moment we met, Joel and I, it was just, you know, me spewing and him going, that's great! I'm going to tell everybody I thought of it.
You know, there would be times on the set where, you know, scene's going okay, and, you know, you could see Joel was kind of hoping we'd do something else, and Jim would just kind of come up with something different. And I know this is the case on half the movies he does, but it was so incredible because, yeah, I think it's like a kid in a candy store for him. He's in this ridiculous costume, he's on these enormous sets, and he could just really go to town. And in the same way, I think Nicholson was just so bigger than life in the first Batman. I think Jim Carrey was pretty much the same in ours.
Was that over the top? I can never tell.
It was very hard not to laugh when Jim was working, because he'll try anything, you know. I mean, I wish we'd done the outtakes.
And it's funny because I think sometimes it kind of rubs some people the wrong way, as if he was maybe stealing the show or something. But I mean, the guy's a genius at what he does.
We had some bad press. I don't know why they did this, but they said that Jim and I weren't getting along, or that I didn't like him or something. I don't know how you can not like him. To be an alien, not to like Jim Carrey.
Our kind of day, yeah.
Joel and I are sitting around, and I said, well, you know what? Tommy Lee Jones could play this role. Harvey Two-Faces would be perfect for him. I called Tommy Lee and said, you know, we'd done The Fugitive and Under Siege together. I said to him, how would you like to be in a Batman movie? He said, well, send me the script. So I sent him overnight the script. He said, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why do you want me in this picture?
I'd never heard of Harvey Two-Face, even though I'd read the comic books when I was a child. But my son knew who he was immediately and was very enthusiastic about the movie. In fact, he was enthusiastic about it sooner than I was, which is to say instantly. It took me a little bit longer to talk myself into it, and it was his enthusiasm that was decisive for me, really. Ordinarily, I look for certain subtleties. The comic book doesn't concern itself with. So it was liberating, of course, to be a comic book villain.
It was odd sitting there in the trailer with Tommy Lee Jones and half his face is melted. You know, we're talking about cattle and he's smoking a cigar. Because I've got a ranch and we talk about horses or whatever, and he had a red face. That was weird.
So this is me telling Tommy Lee Jones he's a genius.
Both of us.
But he knows that already, and so does the world now.
Bruce, who is this beautiful young woman you're with?
Dr. Chase Meridian.
A doctor? What kind of doctor?
Joel has this particular ability to, especially in the casting area, to see long-term out. He always wanted Nicole Kidman. It didn't matter. He just felt that Nicole Kidman was a major rising star and loved her elegance and sophistication that she brought to the picture.
Nicole Kidman, I had met her after she did Dead Calm when she was about 19. She had just come from Australia and had always wanted to work with her.
I mean, it's great to be a part of, you know, the Batman movies. It's such an American icon. And I wanted to work with Joel. And obviously it was such a great cast with Val Kilmer and Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee and Chris O'Donnell that it was pretty hard to resist.
Casting a film is the most important thing on every film. So I think that one of the things you have to be careful of is there may be very big superstar names that want to be in it, but they may not be right. The cast in Batman Forever were not as famous as you think, if you look back in time.
Pre-production is a long period on a Batman, between around 10 months. So the design phase is an extensive phase. I mean, our art department was massive, no question about it. It's one of the most expensive things. Everything in the place is made to order. And so the design and the manufacturing stage is the biggest part of the movie.
You know, it's much more difficult to build outside the realm of the real world than it is the real world, because it's something nobody's ever done before. They haven't built this before, so it's like, well, we can only try it and see. You know, it's a lot of experimentation, and it's far more fun than any real world, because it's, you know, you get to invent.
Every single thing was of such quality, and it shows in the film. It's amazing the craftsmanship on the technical side, and really, really inspired designers. It's just, you know, it's amazing how every single detail fits.
It's big. I mean, it's like the best of every department coming together on something that they don't have to take incredibly seriously, you know, that they can really be creative and fun with. And that's the exciting part for me.
The pressure doesn't come from the complications in the character. It comes really from the magnitude of the movie. The sets are enormous, and some of the mechanical aspects of those sets, the moving parts, are potentially unwieldy. You know, the challenge that really came from living with and maintaining this enormous scale.
Every day was fun. It was just, it's crazy, because also it's such a spectacle. Every set was amazing. Just when you thought after, I don't know, a month or two in Gotham City, figure you've seen everything, and then there would be the circus scene or something else, and it was extraordinary.
Lighting is part of the design of the movie. There are flashing and twirling lights. We photograph our own lights in the picture. I mean, it's part of the set. I mean, it's incredible. And you totally buy it. Hundreds and hundreds of shots. You can see the lights that are actually lighting the set.
It was fun to go to work every day. We were creating, you know, our own world. Brilliant, imaginative, creative people around. I try to have a lot of laughs on the set. We certainly had a lot of visitors. Everybody wanted to come and visit.
I really wish that my kids would have been around when we were making it, because my nieces and nephews came to visit the set, and there was something about putting that suit on, and, you know, it just made you want to, you know, be a superhero, you know, and you really, like, you kind of bought into it. And when kids would come on the set, it was unbelievable. I mean, they would literally be speechless.
I would sort of try in the first couple of weeks when I was in the bat suit to entertain the kids, and I'd goof around with the cape, and the kids go into a trance in front of the bat suit. It's amazing to watch, because particularly with the boys, they just get completely entranced by this costume. They don't need any entertainment at all. So after a while, I would just stand there like I was in the Wax Museum.
When a kid meets an actor in a Batman costume, he's met Batman. It isn't an actor that's Batman. And so that's part of the thrill of it, part of the wonder of it. Bob Kane, the man who created Batman.
Aye.
I wouldn't have this job if it wasn't for him.
Attaboy, attaboy.
Bob spent a great deal of time on the set, and he had his chair with his name on it sitting right next to Joel. So they had a very nice relationship. That was good to see.
I would say he came once a week, which was great. And he was a lot of fun. He had a great sense of humor.
I think I'll be your publicist, Joel.
Oh, this is great. Did you sign it for me?
Well, of course I signed it. Wanted you know how to read?
I loved talking to Bob Kane. He said that he liked what I did a lot. It was nice whenever he said it. He said it a lot, so So it's easy to go to work, but my head would swell inside the bat suit.
We went to a comic convention in San Diego, I think it was, with him. We said, "Well, you want to come?" He said, "Sure." It was like walking around with a god.
Victory is inevitable. For if knowledge is power, then a god am.
Long ago, when this whole thing started, Batman Year One, the Frank Miller comic, was always my favorite. And I was always hoping that I would do that one. There was no desire to do that the first time around, and there was definitely no desire to do that the second time around.
Batman Forever and Batman and Robin often now get squidged together, but Batman Forever is darker than Batman and Robin. It is a retelling of the origin story in a way that attempts to take a little bit closer look at the psychology of young Bruce Wayne and how he became older Bruce Wayne. There's a piece of the movie that isn't in the final cut, but which is strangely the narrative component that the story was built around. All the way throughout the movie, there are these images, there are these recurring images of this book, this mysterious book. And in the movie, when the book is revealed to be Bruce's father's diary, it simply says,
"He'd written in it every day of my life, but now he'd never write in it again. At that moment, I knew my life would never be the same."
In the screenplay and in the movie that we shot, there is a very different center of the movie where he opens up the book and the last entry is, "Martha and I want to stay home tonight, but Bruce insists on going to see a movie." And so the idea was that somewhere Bruce remembered and had repressed his fantasy that this was all his fault. That if he just hadn't made them go see a movie that night, they would never have been out and they would never have been killed. And so the whole movie was actually built around this kind of psychological reckoning, which is why the love interest is a psychologist and why, in fact, there was a whole section of the movie, which was actually in the commercials and the previews, where Bruce then returns to the cave that he fell in running away when he was holding that book and sees that giant bat. Val sort of spread his arms and the bat spread his arms, a very sort of gothic component of the movie, quite dark. It was a much more complex, really kind of fun, but much darker version of the movie.
Now that's impressive.
The post-production process is extremely pressured. In fact, from the last day of photography to completion of the answer print with all the visual effects in there is 10 weeks, which is, in today's world, is lightning time.
There wasn't an enormous expectation on anyone's part because we had gone into it with being told constantly that no one wanted another Batman movie. That was sort of that's what we'd all been told by so many people by then, that if they were banking on it being their biggest movie of the year, they certainly didn't say that.
We had around 200 sponsors, from the hamburger company all the way to toothpaste. I mean, it's just extraordinary. It is a large part of the Batman franchise. It assists us in getting the picture into the public's eye and maintaining it there.
It was amazing. I remember when the first movie came out, for our first movie, Batman Forever, they had these posters. They had one for each character, and they put them all at bus stops around LA, and people were literally ripping these things open to get the posters.
I did know when we were in a small town in Mississippi, I passed a McDonald's, and they were giving away Batman stuff. And I went in to look at it, and it was all gone. And this was about 2 weeks before the movie opened.
McDonald's had these cups that were made in France, and their entire order was gone in 2 days. 2 days.
I did get a sense then, being deep in the heart of Mississippi, that if the Batman merchandise was all out already at McDonald's, that there was an awareness, that there was a big awareness of an anticipation of the film.
When we got our grosses back, I think it was $15 million for Friday night. Nobody had ever heard of anything like that. You know, you know, today, yeah, it was 23 on Friday, you know, but I mean, dear God, that was so much. We all thought it was a typo.
I remember being in Australia on the press junket for Batman the day it opened, and I remember getting a call from Bob Daly and saying that it was going to be the biggest opening weekend of all time. And I know there are some movies that think they're going to do that, but we didn't. It was a real surprise. And then any of those toy franchises and merchandisers and people who had come in with us against their better judgment really got rewarded because they were in there when the movie hit and they had the merchandise to back it up.
There are very few films that reach that many people. I don't think any, none that I can think of, that don't have a really compelling story. There's something fundamentally attractive about the story, and we all want to know who we are, and we all have nightmares that could turn into something that's healing, or we have nightmares that are reoccurring, like Bruce Wayne, that need to get healed, and it's really well made story.
Everybody was generally very happy to have a new style of the franchise. We delivered what we agreed to deliver.
The success of a movie doesn't really happen to you. You just sort of someone tells you about it, or you are aware of it. Your whole experience with the film is really finished when you hand it in. It's like raising someone else's child. You have to give it back after a while. The truth is, it's your movie while you're making it, but it really belongs to the movie studio, and ultimately it belongs to the public, because that's who you really made it for. It was a great experience, and an a really unexpected success. I mean, I thought some people would go to see a Batman movie, but I didn't know we would have the success we did.